Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today our reel of the day that we're going to be working on is the Avet LX 60.1, and the LX model is a larger frame than many of the Avets. This one was sent in by Andrew. He said he had it apart. He's been working on it, but well, it's just not spinning the way it should, and he's right. This thing should be flying rather than crawling in a free spool mode, and it's very tight when you go into the reel mode. It gets very tight, so something's amiss here, and I told Andrew we'll try and work on it and see what we can do to get that corrected. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to go out and get a reel schematic, particularly if somebody's been working on the reel and you're not quite sure if it's been reassembled properly. Then you don't want to spend any time at all without getting a visual picture of what the burst diagram, where the pieces and parts go, and how they go in terms of an orientation, because the likeliness of this having a piece installed incorrectly is high in terms of that. So I went out to reelschematic.com. They have a site there that has an awful lot of fishing reel pieces and schematics and the like, and I recommend if you are working on a reel, particularly if you're working on one for the first time and you don't know the reel, please go out and take a look, find the schematic before you get going, and then as you start servicing your reel, take pictures along the way. That'll give you a reference point in terms of, well, where the pieces were when you took them off, and hopefully if you get stuck on the way back in, it tells you how to put them back together again. Well, we've taken off the handle so far, and we're going to go and remove the drive side plate. There's 3 screws to do that, and as I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting. And well, I'm going to post on all kinds of reels. Today we're working on a rather modern lever drag reel. Tomorrow it might be a classic vintage reel, and maybe a freshwater spinning reel or a low profile bait reel. Doesn't matter. You're basically seeing whatever comes into my shop, and well, sometimes you come in to repair the or finish the repairs that other folks have started. I took the 3 side plate screws out, laid them on my table. That shows me that they are all the same screws, so it doesn't matter which side or hole they go in on the way back in. Lever drags operate by pulling the spool into a pressure plate and applying pressure on the lever or on the pressure plate and drag washer. And I got ahead of myself there. I wanted to say I'm going to remove the lever in order to take an assessment of what else is going on here. We have a couple of different pieces in here. We have a kind of a click ratchet. We have a backstop here. This sometimes gets stuck. Make sure that that ramp is in properly. And it appears to be. And we're just going to keep these all in a parts tray so that when I go to reinstall, well, we'll be able to find them. And next off, we can simply remove the gearing set. This looks right. Well, it doesn't look necessarily right. I don't think we've got this set in properly. We'll find out if it's been turning, so maybe it just got knocked off with the handle. Next is a pressure plate. And there's a bearing inside this pressure plate. Well, this could be an issue here. Let's see what we got. On the spool, we should have a washer. We should have a bearing, a washer, a spring, and then the other bearing. Well, we have none of that there. We have a spring underneath here, which is not going to do anybody any good. So that's probably the issue right here. So this is the way that this is showing up. If you look at your schematic here, the burst diagram, we have the long ferrule. We have the adjuster nuts inside of that. That works. We have the bearing. Then we have the axle shaft. and all of that sits and goes inside the click ratchet here. But this washer and the spring, and hopefully there's another washer. If not, we'll just have to live without. Yep, there's the other washer. Those washers that were on here belong on the other side of the fence, if you will. So let's just put this back in, clean that up, turn that around. We get a bearing now here instead of below. We get the first washer. We get the spring. We get the second washer. Then we get the second bearing. So that's a whole bunch different than the way we saw it coming in. And that probably will make sense in terms of making this thing looser when we go to reinstall. Well, I'm going to suffer through the line on here. So if you're servicing this reel, of course we're just trying to get this thing corrected. He's serviced it already, he's cleaned it up and all. But what we're trying to do here is trying to make sure mechanically it's correct. And you see how the value of that piece comes. So if you're servicing it, make sure that your drag washer's clean. This one's clean. Let's see what else we can do here. I'm trying to make sure that this thing is going to push down, which it does. Take the back end of this and reset it into the case. And then our pressure plate goes on top of it. Make sure your pressure plate is clean. Clean that up well. That goes on next. And when I go to install the pressure plate, I like to make sure that the pinion gear is seated in the pressure plate so that I don't have to snake it around here. Well, there's a little clip here, and I think that that's what I was looking at before. I was trying to make sure that this was properly seated in the main gear. And what I'm going to do right now, I think, is just take the handle assembly and put that on just so it holds it. I don't want to lose that main gear again. So there's a big washer that goes on the handle, a small washer that I just knocked off, and a cap washer. So you can put all of this on before you put that side plate on. Okay, next up then, what we want to do is install our side plate onto the reel. And we should be able to tell very quickly if it spins any easier. It should. Looks like we had our impediment identified there. Just trying to make sure that I have this completely in and I'm not meshing properly here. So let's take that out. When you don't mesh like that, it's usually a matter that well, we should be good here. Everything on this side is right. For some reason this is stumbling here in terms of going down, but we'll try and straighten that up. It's probably not going on the getting seated in here. So let's put the bearing in here. That'd be easy enough, right? Try this again. Just be patient. Don't force anything when you're trying to do this work. There you go. It seems to have a full seat now. If you try to force something, chances are that something is out of place. And if something gets out of place, well, you're going to wind up breaking something is usually what the consequence of that is. So just take your time and make sure that you follow the instructions, if you will. Follow that schematic. If something doesn't feel right, Don't just go forcing anything, like turning it. If it's cranking hard, don't turn it any harder. That's not going to make anything work well. All right, so we've got enough here that we can see. Or we're going to look at that. There you go. So what it was before, obviously, was that the bearing springs were on the wrong side of the shaft. That's been corrected, and we're ready to go again. Let's take the bottom of the lever drag and put that on then. And I like to load it up in the neutral side, so making sure it's in a free spool spin. You have a spring and the nut that goes on top. Let's adjust that down. And now what we can do is we can spin it, make sure that we're in free, advance it, make sure your handle turns, it does. And then this is your adjuster now. So depending on where you want your first strike, bring it back to free spool, tighten it down a little bit, bring it up to the first strike, see how you're holding, and then advance it to full or max drag. That's pretty close. So I'm going to leave that to Andrew to do the rest of that piece, which is simply to make sure that he has it set for the way he's fishing, because that's the advantage of a lever drag reel, is that you can set it to a variety of first strikes and second strikes. So if you're fishing this reel and you're only after 10-pound fish, if you will, well, you can put a pretty heavy max drag early on in the game. If you're fighting a very big fish, or fishing for very big fish, say tuna or something, then you want to have a little bit more variability in that. So those two go on now. To tighten down that handle, we'll just grab our retaining screws here and we'll give it a final test. So these are kind of set up the same way as the smaller Avets. And once you get the sense of them, if you worked on a few of these, then you kind of can eyeball it and say, ah, there it is. But I'll tell you, I've worked on a number of lever drag reels that I was not familiar with. I had one part out of place just like this. And wow, it can just cause you an awful lot of time trying to figure out what's going on with the reel. In this case, we figured that out really early on. This reel's ready to go back fishing again. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. To all of our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts are appreciated. To all, please stay safe, stay well, keep your tackle in gear, keep fishing, and have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.